Detective Samantha Reed ducked under the yellow police tape as rain pelted the darkened streets of Westlake. The rhythmic flashing of red and blue lights cast eerie shadows across the brick facade of the old bank. She tucked a strand of damp, auburn hair behind her ear as she approached the scene, her practiced gaze already scanning for details others might miss. At 34, she'd spent 12 years on the force, the last 5 in homicide, and had earned both respect and a reputation for being relentless when pursuing a case. "What have we got?" she asked, addressing the young officer who stood shivering near the entrance. "Armed robbery gone south," he replied, his face pale beneath the harsh lights. "One security guard dead. Perps got away with about 200,000. Samantha nodded grimly. "Witnesses? Just the cameras. Tech team is pulling footage now." Inside, the bank looked like a hurricane had torn through it. Papers scattered across marble floors, a shattered display case, and the unmistakable dark stain of blood spreading from behind the counter. The forensic team worked methodically, photographing and cataloging evidence as Samantha moved carefully through the space, committing every detail to memory. Detective Mike Ramirez, her partner of 3 years, approached with a tablet in hand. "Got something you should see, Sam." She watched as he pulled up security footage, showing 3 masked figures entering the bank. Their movements were quick, practiced, professional, but her attention fixed on the tallest one, who moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost artistic. Even masked, there was something magnetic about him. "Stop right there," she said, pointing to the screen. "Can you zoom in?" The figure had paused for a split second, looking directly into the camera. Though his face was covered by a black mask, his eyes were visible, startlingly blue, intense, and somehow familiar. "Those eyes," she murmured. "I've seen them before." 3 days later, Samantha stood before the evidence board in the precinct, coffee gone cold in her hand. The bank robbery was their 3rd in 2 months with the same MO, efficient, violent, and executed with military precision. The team had been nicknamed the Ghosts by the press for their ability to disappear without a trace. "Earth to read," Ramirez said, waving a hand in front of her face. "You've been staring at that board for hours." "I know these eyes, Mike," she insisted. "I can't place them, but I've seen them before." Her phone buzzed with a text from their captain. "Meeting in 10. Bringing in feds." Samantha sighed. She hated when cases went federal. Too many cooks, too much politics. But with 3 dead security guards and nearly $500,000 stolen, it was inevitable. That evening, desperate for air that didn't smell like stale coffee and printer toner, Samantha found herself at Callahan's, a dive bar frequented by locals, but rarely by cops. It was exactly why she liked it. Neutral territory, where she could shed her badge for a few hours. She was nursing her whiskey when a man slid onto the stool beside her. "Mind if I join you?" His voice was smooth, carrying a hint of something she couldn't place. Not quite an accent, but a cadence that suggested he might have grown up elsewhere. When she turned to look at him, her breath caught. He was striking, dark, hair, sharp jawline, and eyes so blue they seemed to cut through the dim lighting of the bar. "Free country," she replied, trying to ignore the inexplicable flutter in her chest. "Ethan," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated before taking it. "Sam." His hand was warm, his grip firm but not aggressive. There was something disarming about his smile, genuine, reaching his eyes in a way most smiles didn't. For a moment, Samantha forgot she was a detective who'd spent the day hunting killers. "Bad day?" he asked, nodding toward her nearly empty glass. "Just long." "Yours?" "Complicated," he answered, with a small laugh that seemed to hold secrets. But looking up now, their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Ethan was intelligent and witty, asking questions about her without prying, sharing stories about traveling around the world without revealing too much about himself. It was a dance of words, carefully measured, but somehow still intimate. "What do you do, Sam?" he asked eventually. She rarely lied about her profession, but tonight, she wanted to be just Sam, not Detective Reed. "Consulting," she said vaguely. "Problem solving for clients." His eyes sparkled with amusement, as if he sensed the half-truth. "I bet you're good at it." "I am," she confirmed, allowing herself to smile back. "And you?" "Investment management," he replied smoothly. "Helping people secure their futures." They talked until the bartender called last orders, and when Ethan asked for her number, Samantha surprised herself by giving it to him. As she walked to her car, she felt lighter than she had in months, perhaps years. The next morning brought her crashing back to reality. The FBI had sent a profile on their suspects. 3 males, likely ex-military, aged between 25 and 35. The leader was described as highly intelligent, charismatic, and dangerous. A psychological evaluation suggesting he might be a high-functioning sociopath. "They think they're close to an ID on one of them," Ramirez told her as they pored over the files. Some facial recognition hit from partial footage at the second robbery. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Last night was unexpected. Dinner tonight, Ethan." Despite herself, Samantha smiled. When was the last time she'd been on a proper date? Before the divorce, certainly. Maybe even before the marriage started crumbling. "Hot date," Ramirez teased, noticing her expression. "Mind your own business," she retorted, but without heat. They'd been partners long enough that he was like the annoying brother she'd never had. "About time," he said more seriously. "All work and no play makes Sam a dull girl." She rolled her eyes. "I'll pick you up at 7, she texted back. That night, in a small Italian restaurant downtown, Samantha found herself laughing more than she had in years. Ethan was attentive, his questions thoughtful, his stories captivating. He talked about growing up in foster care, about finding his way through a series of odd jobs before landing on his feet in finance. "What about family?" he asked her, refilling her wine glass. "Not much to tell. Parents divorced when I was 12. Dad's in Florida now. Mom passed a few years back. Cancer." She swirled the wine in her glass. "No siblings. You?" A shadow passed over his face. "Foster system doesn't exactly breed close family ties. But I had a friend, Jake. Grew up together in the same homes. He's the closest thing to a brother I've got." There was something in his voice when he spoke of Jake, a protective fierceness that Samantha recognized. It was the same way she felt about the victims, whose photos lined her evidence board. The need to fight for someone. As they walked back to her car after dinner, their hands brushed, and Ethan caught hers gently. The simple contact sent an electric current up her arm. When they reached her car, he hesitated. "I'd like to see you again, Sam." She looked up at him, studying his face in the glow of the streetlight. Those eyes, so intense, so alive. "I'd like that too." When he leaned down to kiss her, it was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. She answered by stepping closer, one hand moving to his chest, where she could feel his heart racing beneath her palm. The kiss deepened, igniting something within her that had been dormant for too long. They parted breathlessly, and Ethan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "Good night, Sam." As she drove home, Samantha felt a nagging disquiet beneath her elation. She'd spent her career learning to read people, to spot the inconsistencies in their stories, the microscopic tells that betrayed a lie. Yet tonight, she'd deliberately switched off that part of herself. She'd wanted to believe in Ethan's warm smile, in the connection that had sparked between them. But now, alone with her thoughts, she wondered what she might have missed. The next week brought a dizzying contrast of emotions. By day, she hunted the ghosts, following sparse leads and analyzing evidence until her eyes burned. By night, she found herself increasingly drawn to Ethan. They met for dinner twice more, went to a jazz club one evening, and spent Sunday afternoon walking through the botanical garden, his hand warm in hers. He never pressed for details about her work, seeming to understand her need for privacy. In turn, she didn't probe the occasional vague areas in his stories, the moments when his smile would turn distant. The breakthrough in the case came unexpectedly. A facial recognition hit matched one of the robbers to an ex-Army Ranger named Jacob Mercer, dishonorably discharged 3 years prior for assaulting a superior officer. His last known address was a dead end, but his military records listed a foster brother, Ethan Reed. Samantha stared at the photo on her screen, the blood draining from her face. Ethan's military ID showed a younger version of the man she'd been falling for, his expression serious, but those blue eyes unmistakable. The same eyes that had haunted her from the security footage. "You okay, Sam?" Ramirez asked, noticing her sudden pallor. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need some air," she managed, grabbing her jacket and heading for the door before he could ask more questions. Outside, she leaned against the brick wall of the precinct, taking deep breaths of the cool air. Her mind raced through every conversation, with Ethan, searching for clues she'd missed, signs she'd ignored, the investment management line, the vague references to his work, the protective way he spoke about Jake. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Miss you. Dinner tonight?" Samantha closed her eyes, feeling sick. What were the odds of randomly meeting the prime suspect in her case at a bar? 0. He'd targeted her. But why? Was he monitoring the investigation? Or was it something else, making a split-second decision that went against every protocol? She texted back, "Sure, my place. I'll cook." She needed to confront him on her terms, somewhere she controlled. If she was wrong, she'd confess everything and face the consequences. If she was right, her hand drifted to the weapon at her hip. That evening, she moved around her kitchen with mechanical precision, chopping vegetables and marinating chicken, while her mind catalogued the locations of every weapon hidden throughout her apartment. The backup piece in the kitchen drawer, the one taped under the coffee table, the shotgun in her bedroom closet. When the doorbell rang, she took a deep breath, schooling her features into a welcoming smile. Ethan stood there with a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of wildflowers, his smile faltering slightly as he took in her expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, stepping inside. "Just a long day at work," she replied, accepting the flowers. "These are beautiful." They made small talks as she finished dinner preparations, but the easy flow of their previous conversations was gone, replaced by a crackling tension. Samantha felt his eyes on her when she turned away, studying her with an intensity that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps she'd simply been too blind to see it. Over dinner, she steered the conversation deliberately. "Tell me more about your friend Jake," she said casually. "You mentioned you grew up together." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Caution, perhaps. "Not much to tell that I haven't already said. We were in the same foster homes from age 12 through 18, joined the military together after high school. The military? She raised her eyebrows as if this were new information. You never mentioned that. He set down his fork. His movements deliberate. It's not a period of my life. I talk about much. Why not? War changes people, he said quietly. Not always for the better. And what about Jake? Did it change him too? Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. What's this about Sam? She held his gaze steadily. I'm just trying to understand you better. A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Ethan wiped his mouth with his napkin and placed it beside his plate. You know, don't you? Know what? She asked, her heart hammering. Who I am. His voice remained calm, but his posture had shifted subtly. Coiled energy replacing relaxed charm. Who Jake is. Samantha calculated the distance to the kitchen drawer. Too far. You're Ethan Reed, ex-Army Ranger, foster brother to Jacob Mercer. She paused. And one of the ghosts who've robbed 3 banks and killed 3 people. To her surprise, pain flashed across his face. We never meant for anyone to die. The admission hung in the air between them. Samantha's training told her to reach for her weapon, to call for backup, to arrest him on the spot. But something else, something dangerous and foolish, made her ask instead. Then why did they? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of genuine distress. The first time, the guard wasn't supposed to be there. Night shift change, we'd timed it perfectly. But he came back for his phone. He looked down at his hands. Jake panicked, and the others, similar circumstances. Bad timing, unexpected variables. His eyes met hers, blazing with intensity. I never pulled the trigger, Sam. I swear to you. But you were there, she said softly. You planned it. You helped rob those banks. Those deaths are on you too, Ethan. He didn't deny it. Instead, he... When did you figure it out? Today. Facial recognition matched Jake from the footage. She hesitated. But I think part of me knew something wasn't right from the beginning. I just didn't want to see it. Why didn't you arrest me the moment I walked in tonight? It was the question she'd been asking herself all day. I needed to hear it from you, she said finally. I needed to know if any of it was real. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Meeting you wasn't planned, Sam. I saw you at the bar that night and couldn't look away. I knew it was stupid, dangerous even. But, he shook his head. I told myself one conversation. Just one. But then one became 2, and 2 became... He gestured between them. You knew I was a cop. It wasn't a question. Not at first, I swear. But after our first date, I had you checked out. By then, it was already too late. Too late for what? His smile was sad. For me to walk away from you. Is that why you kept seeing me? To monitor the investigation? No. The word came sharply, his eyes flashing. I kept seeing you because for the first time in years, I felt something real. Something good. Samantha wanted desperately to believe him, but the detective in her remained skeptical. If that's true, then turn yourself in. Tell us where Jake is. Make this right. Ethan laughed hollowly. Make it right. Sam, there's 15 years of minimum security. Making it right. And that's if I'm lucky. It's better than death row for felony murder, she countered. Which is where this is heading if you don't stop. You think I don't know that? For the first time, his composure cracked. You think I don't lie awake at night seeing that guard's face? Hearing his wife's screams on the news when they interviewed her. He pushed away from the table, standing to pace the small dining area. This wasn't supposed to be who I am. Then who are you, Ethan? He stopped moving, his back to her, shoulders slumped in defeat. I don't know anymore. Some days I think I'm the guy who plans heists. Because he's good at it. Some days I think I'm still that kid in foster care, just trying to protect his brother. And then I met you. And for a few hours a day, I got to be someone else entirely. Someone better. Samantha stood slowly, moving toward him with the caution one might approach a wounded animal. It's not too late to choose who you want to be. He turned to face her, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made her breath catch. Isn't it? Later, she would never be able to say who moved first. One moment they were standing apart, the weight of truth between them, and the next his lips were on hers. Desperate and seeking, she knew she should push him away, call for backup, end this dangerous game. Instead, her hands clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, as if she could absorb his darkness. Or perhaps find absolution for her own betrayal of everything she stood for. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. What happens now? It was the question that had no good answer. If she did her duty, he would go to prison. If she didn't, she betrayed her badge and everything she believed in. And no matter what she chose, the fragile connection between them, built on deception, but somehow still achingly real, would shatter. I don't know, she admitted. He brushed a tear from her cheek. She hadn't even realized she was crying. Yes, you do. You're a good cop, Sam. It's who you are. And what about you? I think I could have been good in another life. His smile was tinged with regret. Maybe even good enough for you. The ringing of her phone broke the moment. Ramirez's name flashed on the screen. With trembling fingers, she declined the call. You should answer it, Ethan said quietly. It could be important. It's my partner. Does he know about me? She shook her head. Not yet. I didn't tell anyone. Relief and something like hope flickered across his face. Sam, Her phone rang again. This time it was her captain. She couldn't ignore this one. Reed, she answered, her voice remarkably steady. We've got a location on Mercer, Captain, Bryson said, without preamble. SWAT's mobilizing now. I need you and Ramirez at the station in 20. Her eyes locked with Ethan's. He'd heard. She could tell from the way his body tensed. I'll be there, she said, ending the call. They found Jake, he said, already moving toward the door. Ethan, wait. She grabbed his arm. If you warn him, you're aiding and abetting. I can't let you do that. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. What are you going to do? Arrest me? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Her duty was clear, but her heart, her foolish, compromised heart, rebelled against it. Let me talk to him, she said suddenly. Before SWAT gets there, maybe I can convince him to surrender peacefully. Ethan's expression darkened. Jake won't go down without a fight. Then he'll die tonight, she said bluntly. Is that what you want? Of course not. Then help me save his life. She tightened her grip on his arm. Help me save yours too. Doubt warred with hope on his face. Why would you do this for me? Because I'm falling in love with you, she thought, but couldn't say. Because I see the good man you could be beneath the criminal you've become. Because everyone deserves one chance at redemption. Because it's the right thing to do, she said instead. 30 minutes later, they pulled up a block away from a rundown apartment building on the east side. Samantha had texted Ramirez that she was following up on a lead and would meet them at the station. It bought them maybe 15 minutes before questions would be raised. Apartment 3C, Ethan said, his voice tight with tension. Sam, you should... No, there's a third man. Carlos. He's... unpredictable. 3 men. Like the robbery crew. Ethan nodded grimly. He's the reason things went wrong. The deaths, they were his doing. Jake and I, we never wanted violence. She wanted to believe him. Stay behind me, she instructed as they approached the building. And if this goes south, you run. Understand, I'm not leaving you. This isn't a debate, Ethan. I'm already risking my career, probably my freedom, being here with you. If things go bad, you disappear. She fixed him with a stern look. That's the deal. Reluctantly, he nodded. The building's security was non-existent, the main door hanging slightly ajar on damaged hinges. They climbed the stairs in silence, Samantha leading with her weapon, drawn but low at her side. When they reached 3C, she positioned herself to the side of the door, gesturing for Ethan to knock. He rapped 3 times, paused, then twice more, clearly a code. The door cracked open, revealing a sliver of a face. Dark eyes, suspicious. Ethan? What the hell, man? We said no contact for a week after... The eyes widened as they shifted to Samantha. Who the fuck is she? Easy, Jake, Ethan said, his voice calm and reasonable. She's here to help. Can we come in? The door opened wider, revealing a wiry man, with the same alertness Samantha had seen in countless veterans. Hyper-vigilant, always scanning for threats. Behind him, she glimpsed a third man, larger and more menacing, watching them with open hostility. She's a cop, the third man, Carlos presumably, spat, reaching for something at his waistband. Samantha raised her weapon in one fluid motion. Police! Don't move. Everything happened at once. Carlos drew a gun. Jake lunged toward her, and Ethan shouted, "No!" as he threw himself between her and the others. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space. Ethan staggered, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped between his fingers. Samantha's training took over, her body moving before her mind could process what had happened. She fired twice, hitting Carlos in the chest. He crumpled to the floor, his weapon clattering beside him. "Don't move," she commanded Jake, who froze, hands raised. "Jesus, Ethan!" Jake gasped, staring at his brother. "What the hell were you thinking?" Ethan grimaced through the pain. "She's trying to help us, you idiot. SWAT's on their way. She came to warn us." Jake's eyes darted between them, disbelief evident. "A cop? You brought a cop here to help us?" "She's not just a cop," Ethan said quietly. "She's..." He broke off, eyes rolling back as his knees buckled. Samantha holstered her weapon and caught him before he hit the floor, lowering him gently. "We need to get him to a hospital." "Are you insane?" Jake hissed. "The moment you walk in there with a GSW victim, they'll call it in. He'll die if he doesn't get medical attention," she countered, applying pressure to the wound. "And you've got maybe 10 minutes before this place is swarming with SWAT. Make your choice." Jake's face contorted with indecision. "He's all I've got," he said finally, his voice breaking. "He's been protecting me our whole lives." "Then let me protect him now," she urged. "And you too, if you'll let me." Understanding dawned slowly on Jake's face. "You care about him." Before she could respond, the wail of distant sirens reached them. Time was running out, yes, she admitted. "Against every rational thought, against everything I stand for, yes, I care about him." Jake nodded once, decisively. "Get him out of here. I'll handle this." He gestured to Carlos's body. "Jake!" "He killed those guards." Jake cut her off. "Not us. Never us. We just wanted the money." He knelt beside Ethan, gripping his brother's limp hand. "Tell him I'm sorry. For everything. Tell him I finally returned the favor. Protected him for once." Samantha understood what he was offering. A scapegoat. A clean resolution to the case. A chance for Ethan to start over. It was wrong in every legal sense, but in the moral calculus of the moment, it felt like justice. they'll still look for you, she warned. Jake smiled grimly. They won't find me. Been disappearing my whole life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. Everything's here. The accounts where we stashed the money, recordings of Carlos bragging about the kills. Should be enough to close your case. The sirens grew louder. Jake helped her get Ethan to his feet, draped between them. Back stairs, he directed. Your car nearby, she nodded. 1 block north. At the back exit, Jake paused, looking at his semi-conscious brother with a mixture of love and resignation. He's a good man, underneath it all. Got dealt a bad hand, but he's got a good heart. His eyes met Samantha's. Take care of him. I will, she promised. 6 months later, Samantha stood on the porch of a small cabin nestled in the mountains of Colorado, watching snow drift lazily from a gray sky. The case of the ghosts had been closed, with Carlos identified as the ringleader and killer. Jake Mercer was still listed as wanted for questioning, but the manhunt had cooled as evidence pointing to Carlos mounted. The money had been recovered. Families of the victims compensated from the stolen funds. Justice, of a sort, had been served. She had resigned from the force 3 months after that night, unable to reconcile her actions, her lies of omission, her active participation in obscuring the truth, with the oath she'd sworn to uphold. Some nights, doubt still gnawed at her, but more often, she found peace in the knowledge that she'd followed her heart when it had mattered most. The door opened behind her, and strong arms wrapped around her waist. Penny for your thoughts, Ethan murmured against her hair. She leaned back into his embrace, just thinking about how we got here. His left shoulder still bothered him in cold weather, a permanent reminder of the bullet he'd taken for her. He'd spent 2 months recovering in a hospital under a different name, then another month in physical therapy before they'd moved west, starting fresh with new identities. Courtesy of connections Jake had left them. Any regrets? He asked, the question carrying all the weight of their complicated history. Samantha turned in his arms to face him, those blue eyes, once haunting her from security footage, now the first thing she saw each morning. Gazed down at her with a love she still sometimes felt she didn't deserve. None. She answered truthfully. You. Only that I didn't meet you. In another life, he said. One where I could have been worthy of you from the start. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw. We can't change how our story began, but we get to decide how it continues. As snow fell around them, blanketing the world in quiet renewal, Ethan lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that spoke of second chances, of redemption found in the most unlikely places, and of a love that had transcended the boundaries of duty and defied all odds to bloom in the space between right and wrong. In that moment, for two people who had spent their lives on opposite sides of the law, one upholding it with unflinching determination, the other bending it with practiced skill, the world simplified into a single truth. Sometimes, the bravest act isn't following rules or breaking them, but recognizing when love demands both courage and surrender in equal measure, and sometimes, in the gray spaces between black and white, between duty and desire, between past mistakes and future possibilities, two souls find each other and create their own definition of justice. One where forgiveness outweighs judgment, where redemption is possible, and where love, against all reason, conquers all.